So welcome to the third episode of the Thinkers Oasis. In the last episode, we had Dr. Ryan Mullins over.
Dr. Ryan Mullins.
Right, because he has a PhD, but he also has this other thing, rehabilitation, right? And we talked about all kinds of stuff, including models of God, time, theistic personalism. So I would recommend you to check it out if you haven't already, because we kind of show to that classical theism is false and neoclassical theism is true. I gotta say, I don't really have much of a problem with using the term theistic personalism. I know Ryan doesn't like it because he said it's just a pedagogical term and it historically doesn't make sense. Craig also doesn't like it. He also called it ahistorical, but I guess it is a term that clarifies in what way you think God is a person. And typically, if you are a theistic person, you will also reject divine simplicity. You will also reject something like atemporality. So I think it's kind of useful. I think I can also go with neoclassical theism. It doesn't really matter too much, just semantics, as long as we clarify what we say. I think it's kind of fine. Do you have something to say, Justin, about last week's episode?
I have nothing to say.
Nothing? Okay.
Except that, like, I have hidden in this episode. Like, let me show on my camera. If you can see, I have this as, you know, my picture. I've hidden pictures of this picture all over like today's episode. So you find them, you know?
Right. So today's episode is so we're gonna talk about what's typically called the Divine Council first, and then we have a bunch of other stuff to talk about after that. So maybe we'll talk about it from the epistemology if we have time. Maybe not. Also that, and possibly also Newcomb's paradox, just because it's a bit insane to talk about this on the same episode where we talk about the Divine Council. So the term Divine Council is actually found in Scripture. It's found in, I think, in Psalm 82.
Yeah,
right? In which it talks about God. But that's what the English translation says. It says God. The Hebrew says Elohim, right? And when when it comes to this Divine Council, it also describes them as Elohim. And sometimes English speakers, they want us to think that, okay, Elohim, that's just another term for God. Kinda, but it's a bit of a broader term, because in English, typically we think of this capital G God, which is God who is let's say, the ultimate foundation of reality.
They think of it more in like terms of like properties that God has, like, you know, omniscience and all of
yeah. So they think of God as the maximally great being, right?
Yes.
And we talked a bunch about what properties this capital G God has. And we are not denying that this is God, in the sense that this is the Holy Trinity. These are the properties that he has. But when the Bible talks about this word Elohim, it doesn't really refer to that. It just refers to some kind of a noetic being, so to speak. Some kind of a being which, I guess, we want to put it in metaphysical language, and you could say it's immaterial. I mean, I'm not really sure if the Bible itself makes claims like that, but that's how a philosopher would think of it. So some immaterial sort of being. And it refers to God, but it also refers to the rest of the Divine Council.
If you want, I can pull up like Heiser's book.
Right.
I can just
I think Michael Heiser is a good scholar on this. Is it the Unseen Realm, or is it?
Yeah, it's Unseen Realm. So this is from like the book. Here you can see where I have highlighted. It says, so Elohim is often translated God. When we look at the Hebrew word the same way we look at the Hebrew word the same way we look at the capitalized God. When we see the word God, we instinctively think of a divine being with a unique set of attributes: omnipresence, omnipotence, sovereignty, and so on. But this is not how biblical writers thought about the term. Biblical authors did not assign a specific set of attributes to the word Elohim. That is evident when we observe how they use the word. And then you can see here that has like wherever he shows where the word Elohim is used, or for whom I should say.
So it is used for Yahweh, for God. Okay, the God of Israel.
More than 1,000 times. Members of the Yahweh's council, gods, goddesses of other nations, demons,
even demons.
Yeah,
and those who came from Samuel.
Yeah, the deceased, like the departed spirit of Samuel. Then angels, or the angel of Yahweh.
And the angel of Yahweh, that's not what people may think of an angel. That could be also God, right?
Yeah, it depends, because like it depends from context to context. Is like the word like angel of the Lord is used. Well, I'm gonna say angel of the Lord because that's how it's traditionally used in like in English, and that's how it's also used in the Septuagint. It's used in the Old Testament most of the time. It's probably referring to like Yahweh, so the second person of the Trinity. And in the New Testament, it's not, because like it says like angel of the Lord, they might refer to like Gabriel, in the Gospels.
That's the thing. Contemporary English speakers, and that's not limited to English, but when they hear the word angel, they typically think of some human-like figure with wings. But in the text, it means messenger.
Yeah.
And in the Septuagint, the ancient Greek translation, the word is angelos, and it just means, messenger. So all of these sort of different kinds of beings are mentioned with the word Elohim. So also God, Yahweh, but you see how it is broader. So there is this divine council, the head of which is the actual God, right? Who also created the rest of them, but also the rest of them are there. And typically, I think in some verses they're mentioned as the sons of God.
Yes.
This is in Genesis. And it's also somewhere else, right? Is it in the Psalms?
In Psalms, yes. I was going to say, just like go back to like what you said earlier on. Here is again from like Heiser's book. You can see like where I have highlighted. While all the figures on the list have in common is that they are inhabitants of the spiritual world. The word Elohim is a place of residency term. It has nothing to do with a specific set of attributes. So just cite that in briefly back to
you. So when those ancient writers were writing these passages of the Old Testament, they weren't necessarily trying to do metaphysics. They weren't necessarily trying to see, what's the ontology of that sort of being. They weren't really referring to whether it's temporal or atemporal, or this sort of stuff that we talked in the last episode. They wanted to refer to them as some kind of being that's a messenger of God. So the attributes that these sort of beings have don't really matter. Another thing I should point out is, I mentioned a bit before, they're usually called sons of God. That's the way they are called in the Dead Sea Scrolls. So these are a few scrolls which were found a bit over 100 years ago, right?
Yeah.
But in the Masoretic text, these are called sometimes sons of Israel. And this made some people think that, sons of Israel, these are just humans, right? But the Masoretic text, even though it includes some old manuscripts, it was compiled. Actually, you know when it was compiled?
900s to like 1100.
Oh, really? That late?
Yeah, it's in like the first ones, like the manuscripts you have from 900 are just from the minor prophets, the last 12 prophets, and that's it for like 900. I don't think it's like 1,000 or like 1,100 where we get like actually like more of the Old Testament.
And it is these sons of God which, in the Tower of Babel story in Genesis, that are spread to all the nations, right?
Yes.
So these are not humans. These are some sort of noetic entities or whatever you want to call them, right? And yeah, because the Dead Sea Scrolls is a bit more reliable than the Masoretic text because it dates to earlier time, to the Second Temple period, right?
Yes.
Although it has fragments, we don't necessarily have the full text, but we have fragments that say Sons of God rather than Sons of Israel. And one of the stories in which you see this is, maybe you've heard of this, maybe you've heard people talking about the Nephilim, right? So what are those Nephilim? Well, they are the children that came from the daughters of man who were with the sons of God. So they are the offspring of the sons of God and the daughters of man. And so what exactly are those Nephilim? Typically, scholars interpret them as some kind of giants, right?
Yeah.
And this is some interesting sort of thing. So the typical Christian view of the origin of demons is that there was a rebellion of angels, and then they just became demons, right? And there are verses that talk about the rebellion of angels. They don't really say that they became demons, but that's typically how most Christians made sense of it historically. Heiser has another view. He claims this is a common view in the Second Temple period, and you can find this in some texts of the Dead Sea Scrolls, like the Book of Giants, I think, where he says it's these Nephilim that when they died, they became demons. And the reason for this would be that the sons of God, well, these were not humans anyway, they were some kind of noetic being. So the demons are also this sort of noetic being, and so it kind of makes sense this way. Now, I'm not sure if I hold the same view. I think possibly demons could be something broad that could include both rebel angels and the Nephilim and all of that. But yeah, that's the view of Heiser. So what do you make of it?
I'm kind of like a really similar to Heiser, where it's like I have like this like restricted view of demons, where it's like it's probably just this thing that like fallen angels are a different class. But at the same time, I feel like it also could just be like a semantic thing,
Possibly, yeah. I mean, there's a bunch of stuff, right? There's the cherubim.
Yeah.
So the way we grouped up that, that's not complete. There are a bunch of different ways to do that. But I think a point that Heiser makes is that it talks about them being dirty, right?
Yeah.
And then which are the sort of things that make them dirty in Leviticus? Well, one of them is blood. So they say, well, maybe they had something to do with blood, maybe their own blood, so maybe they died or something. So
no, it's not just blood, it's also like dead bodies, being around dead bodies.
Okay. So that makes it even stronger of a point, I guess. Yeah, that would be his view. You have something else to say about the Divine Council?
I was just gonna look at like passages for it.
Yeah, let's do that.
Here, I'm gonna start with the New Testament though, so it might be like a weird place for us to start, but trust me with it. So here, if we look at verse 6, this is Hebrews chapter 1, by the way. It says, and also when he brings the firstborn into the world, God says, let all the angels of God express adoration to him. I have the Greek text next to, like, as you can see, next to the English translation. I bring this up persist does not appear in the Hebrew text.
But wait a minute, that's the New Testament, right?
Yeah. No, but I'm saying like this, like here, look, it says Deuteronomy 32:43. New Testament agrees with the
With the Septuagint.
Septuagint against the Masoretic text.
Yeah.
So let me go to the Septuagint on that. Is it 31? I forgot the verse already.
I think
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, that's Genesis. I'm gonna cut this out because you know.
Yeah, it's okay.
32:43. Okay. Okay, here you can see where it says this is in the Septuagint. It says, "Delight, O heavens, with him, and worship him, you sons of God. Delight, O nations, with his people, and prevail with him, all you angels of God."
Here, sons of God on 43, right?
Yeah, and here you can see, like, you know, well, I mean, if you look at the Greek text, you can see where the author of Hebrews is pulling this from, because it literally reads the same. It's in there, you see explicitly the reference to like sons of God and angels of God.
Yeah, padesi Theou, it says in the Greek text.
Yeah.
So that would be sons, yeah. That's how Jesus is called in the New Testament.
It's pronounced, you know, Huioi, not E.
Okay.
Yeah, anyways.
But to make a point, so Jesus is the one unique Son of God. So monogenes, that means one of a kind. So he's Son of God in a very special way, not in this way. Jesus is the second person of the Trinity. He is God in the capital G God sort of sense. So we
I
are
was
not
actually
trying
gonna get to that here in a bit.
Okay. So we're not trying to make a weird point that Jesus is just one of those Elohim. No.
So here I have on the left side the Septuagint, and on the right side English translation of Dead Sea Scrolls. What do you notice?
So 43 says his sons, well, in both of them.
No,
but it says you sons of God. The other says all the divine sons.
Yeah.
So both of them have that. Both the Septuagint and the Masoretic, and the Dead Sea Scrolls, but the Masoretic doesn't have that.
And I'm not gonna pull up the Masoretic text mainly because I'm kind of lazy.
Okay.
But I do encourage you whenever we use the Septuagint, do like go into like go into your Bibles and like double check it. Yeah, I kind of paused there because it's like some like Old Testament, like I think it's the ESV I know takes into consideration the Dead Sea Scrolls, but if you go to like a King James, these verses aren't there.
So what does it say then? So
and it just doesn't have this verse here
at all.
Yeah, it simply ain't there. Here, let me go pull up a King James here really fast if I have one on.
There's no 43 or so.
No, there is a 43. It just reads differently.
Okay.
Rejoice, all ye nation, with his people, and he will avenge the blood of his servants, and will render vengeance to his adversaries, and will be merciful unto his land and unto his people. That's literally the King James.
Okay. Yeah, blood of his servants, adversaries. Yeah. No mention of the sons.
It's in earlier you did mention here about how like it says like sons of God versus sons of Israel, right? Here I'll actually look up it's in the same like chapter. I just forgot where it's. Give me a minute to look it up.
Okay. I guess in one episode we can also talk about the two powers in heaven, right? So this will be a non-Unitarian view of the Old Testament about God, so that there is one God, but he's not one person. So some ancient Jews, they thought that, well, there are two persons. And that's interesting. What?
Read verse 8.
So when the Most High distributed nations as he scattered the sons of Adam, he set up boundaries for the nations according to the number of angels of God. That's the Septuagint.
Yeah.
Or
It
that's the... Actually, these are both Septuagints, dude.
No, we are.
Yeah.
Oh shit, they are both the Septuagint. My bad. Okay, that's kind of embarrassing because we have to go redo that one segment.
I don't know. We can, we can't leave it there just because it's... But does it look too ridiculous now?
It looks too ridiculous. Okay, no wonder it looked weird. Okay, here we go. Okay, here. Let's go over here. So, okay, here, like mentioned earlier, here is like read verse 8 in both of these.
So when the Most High distributed nations as he gathered the sons of Adam, he set up boundaries for the nations according to the number of the angels of God. So this one just says angels of God, sons of Adam, right? Yes. But if you look at the Dead Sea Scrolls, it says the number of the children of God. Now, children, I mean, what would the original word be?
I don't know. I don't know Hebrew, so I couldn't tell you.
Okay, but it's not angels of God, right? That is something separate.
It's something. Angels is something that like was added into Septuagint, mainly because at this point, like that's where like theos tends to be referred more to God alone. Over
Okay,
like,
yeah,
like a
that's
general
the
term.
thing.
But
So even in Greek, the word theos was somewhat broad in use because Greeks were polytheists, right?
Yeah.
So they didn't think...
like even like Socrates, like I think in the Phaedrus, he has like trouble like coming up with a definition for God, so he just leaves it as like an immortal being.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so it's like anything that's immortal. Seems to be.
So both the word Elohim and the word theos are kind of very broader than just referring to capital G God. But again, none of that implies that there isn't one capital G God in Christianity. I think there is one. But it's just interesting to see a few passages that talk about this sort of divine counsel that sometimes gets ignored.
So the word for children in Hebrew is b'nai.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll read if you want. I can read like with this other like
Yeah, Ben means son anyway,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So b'nai,
yeah.
sons. I'll read what this like commentary on this one translation says if you want. He set out the boundaries of peoples by the numbers of the sundry gods. It didn't here like I'll just take a picture of this and put it on stream when I edit this.
Okay.
I'll just leave it there because I just want to read all of it.
Okay, that's all right.
Yeah. So, anyways, I made the blunder. I didn't realize that like I had two Septuagints opened up. Anyways, here, let's go back to like the original thing about like the lights, O heavens. Here it says in the Dead Sea Scrolls, it says, "Rejoice, O heavens, together with him, and bow down to him, all you gods, for he will avenge the blood of his sons." So what's noticeable there?
Well, it mentions blood. Yeah.
Not just there, but it says, "Rejoice, O heavens, together with him, and bow down to him, all you gods." That's in the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Okay, right, yeah.
Bow down to them, all you gods. And that gets
Yeah,
translated.
I was reading the Septuagint, yeah.
But how does that gets written down with delight to heavens with him and worship him, you sons of God. And again, the Greek word for worship there is Petros Gkionis, which simply just means to like bow down.
Yeah.
So
Doesn't mean worship.
it gets translated into Greek as sons of God. It then gets later used in the New Testament as angels of God.
And that would be what textual critics would typically say, okay, we should probably look at the original sort of text, and in this context, it would be at the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Yes.
Because it's the original that's inspired, it's not the translation. The Septuagint is a translation, it's a useful translation. In some ways, it could be more useful than the Masoretic for certain topics.
Yeah.
It remains a translation nonetheless. So is there something else you want to say about the Divine Council?
I was just gonna like check like this famous passage here that it's made famous because of Heiser, you know. And it says here like God. This is the famous one. God stood in the assembly of the gods, and then in the middle he judges the gods. It then later says, "You're gods, all children of the Most High. But now you die as humans, and as one of the rulers, you will fall or you fall." It's like Kaiser really like spends a bunch of time on it, so there ain't much to like for me to add.
Okay, yeah, you can check out Heiser's content on this. I mean, there's the Unseen Realm, the book. I think he even has a documentary with the same title. He has a bunch of documentaries actually, and he even has material on YouTube and even a podcast, The Naked Bible. So you can check him out on the.
No, there's this one passage here that further dig a bit further. I just have to find it.
All right, that's fine. And Heiser even talks about how there's spiritual warfare, so to speak. So, because of these sons of God, they were spread in different nations and all of that. They are actively doing stuff to humans, right? So that will be the kind of position he has, and he bases it on this. While a more typical Christian understanding of those kinds of powers would be that they're just evil angels, which are demons, and then there's Satan, and that's the evil stuff. While ignoring that, there could be these sort of Elohims who are also doing something, and that possibly these demons are not really angels; they're the Nephilim or whatever. But yeah,
so
doesn't really change the core of the faith, but yeah, it changes some sort of stuff like this. What?
It doesn't change like the core of the faith, but it does change other aspects that like people don't really think too much about, you know.
Right.
Okay, so this is from the last chapter of it's from the last chapter of First Kings, or like if you're Orthodox like me, you're gonna call this book Third Kingdoms. Yeah, I bring this up now because like you might just hear me say Third Kingdoms or Third Kings, and then like also like First Kings. Yeah. It might get confusing, so just keep that in mind. So in context, this one king, this is after like the kingdom becomes divided, and this king of a king of Judah goes up to the king of Israel, and they're gonna go fight this one kingdom together. But the king of Israel is or the king of Judah, my bad, it's like, do you have a prophet of Yahweh around? Like, I want to know if we're gonna win this or not. And the king of Israel is like, yeah, like we have a bunch of prophets, and they all kind of say like, oh yeah, like you know, that he's gonna win the battle, right?
Yeah.
And then the king of Judah is still kind of skeptical. It's like, oh, this seems kind of like, you know, too good to be true. And then the king of Israel is like, yeah, I have this one prophet, but I don't like him because he like says a bunch of bad stuff.
Okay.
It then like he brings this prophet to give him prophecy of whether or not he's gonna win the battle or not. And the prophet first says like, yes, you're gonna win, go into battle. Then like the king perceives that he's like mocking him. So then he asks again to like tell them the truth. And so he does. And this is what the prophet Micaiah says to the king of Israel. Not I, hear the word of the Lord. Not so. I saw the God of Israel sitting on his throne, and all the host of heaven stood around him on his right and on his left. The Lord said, who will trick Ahab, king of Israel, so that he will go up and fall at Ramoth Gilead? This one said this, and this one said that. A spirit went out and stood before the Lord and said, I will deceive him. He said to him, Lord, in what way? And he said, I will go out and I will be a false spirit in the mouth of all his prophets. He said, you will deceive and you will prevail. Go out and do this. Now look, the Lord had put a false spirit in the mouth of all your prophets, and the Lord has decreed against you evil things. So in this passage, you see that like when God is deciding to like punish the king of Israel, he doesn't do it alone, but he is with like, in a sense, with other spirits. Again, there's tied into the word Elohim, which is inhabitants of the spiritual world, and God makes decision alongside of them.
So a divine council is there, right?
Yeah.
Now, which are the members of the divine council? I guess this is not really mentioned, right?
It's not mentioned, but it's not like too like important in the sense that like you don't need to know this guy's name and that guy's name.
No,
it's not
because
like
the God who we should worship is Yahweh. Yeah, not
not,
and again, Yahweh always existed. These are creations of Yahweh.
Yeah. I was gonna say it's not like when you die and before you can enter heaven, you have like a pop quiz and it's like, oh, what's the name of all the council members? No, it's just like the important thing to know is that they're there, and that's it.
Right, and it brings to this discussion on whether Christianity is monotheistic or if it's henotheistic. I wouldn't claim it's polytheism, because in polytheism, typically you're supposed to venerate, to worship a bunch of different gods. That's not really what's the case in Christianity, since there's one essence in the Trinity, so there's one God. But there are these sort of Elohims too, the sons of God. So henotheism is the view that you think there are a bunch of gods, but you only worship one of them. And some scholars have made the claim that Christianity is henotheistic, or it is, or that these sort of passages from the Old Testament are henotheistic. I would say it comes down to what you mean by theistic there when you say monotheism and henotheism. So do you talk about the capital G God? Then I guess it would be monotheism. Or do you talk about very broadly? Because then I guess it includes this sort of stuff, although nobody worships them, or at least it's not Orthodox to worship them. It's a sin. It's idolatry, I guess, or it doesn't count as idolatry, but it's still worshiping something that you shouldn't. Yeah.
It's latria is reserved in the New Testament for God alone.
And in the Old Testament
that would like violate it, because like even though you're not worshiping an idol, eidolon, like there's a carved statue that like a god inhabits, you're still worshiping or you're still serving something that's not God.
Yeah.
Which is again who you're supposed to serve.
Right.
Hold on, I'm looking for this passage because I forgot that was John chapter 7's John chapter 10.
Okay.
Like you so.
So should I talk about the Newcomb's paradox while you?
No, because like it is related to the divine council.
Okay, all right.
So this point, again, it's not my own. I got it from a video that some guy uploaded of Heiser.
Okay.
Here is when the Jews are like trying to arrest Jesus, right? Here you can see the Jews answer them. Wait, hold on. And again, the Jews picked up rocks to stone him. Jesus told them, I have shown you many good works from my Father. For which of those do you stone me? The Jews answered them, we do not stone you for a good work, but for blasphemy, because you, being a man, make yourself God. Jesus answered them, "Is it not written in your law, I said you are gods?" If he called them gods, those to whom the word of God came, and scripture cannot be broken, do you say of him whom the Father has consecrated and sent into the world, you blaspheme, because I said I am the Son of God? If I do not do the works of my Father, do not believe me. But if I do them, even though you do not believe me, believe the works, so that you may recognize and believe that the Father is in me and I in him.
So he called them gods, right?
Yeah.
The Greek uses the word "they," right?
Yeah, theoi.
Yeah, okay.
Just to clarify, if you're confused, he's the modern Greek pronunciation. I'm using a ancient pronunciation. So
Okay.
yeah.
But how do you relate that to the divine council?
Here he quotes, like, this is a quote from Psalm 81 or 82 in the Hebrew text, 81 in the Septuagint. Ye are gods, but then here it's like to go back when you said that those are sons of God, but Jesus is also son of God. This is to denote that he has like a special relationship with God, because it's like they're like, he does mention the other gods, right? But here, like, it shows that like that Jesus and the Father have like a special relationship, and this is also seen elsewhere in John, where he says that him and the Father are one.
Yeah, and I think the word monogenes is used, so one of a kind.
Yeah, so it's like all of this denotes that like that Jesus is not like the other Elohim. He is the Elohim that judges those Elohims.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting because this word monogenes, it actually means one of a kind, but some medieval scholars, when they turned it into the word that in English it's translated as begotten, I'm not sure what's the Latin one, but they thought it's some weird thing about metaphysics, but it's not. It's just means that he's unique, so different from the rest. So different from, of course, all of those, all of those members of the divine council who are not Yahweh.
I was gonna say Hebrews 1 also makes this point even more explicit. Here, let me just go up, like, just to go back to where we started. It says here, to which of the gods, or to which of the angels did God ever say, "You are my son; today I have become your father"? If then he brings the firstborn into the world, he says that all the angels of God express adoration to him.
Mm-hmm.
Again, like, if you just go read just Hebrews chapter 1, it shows you that like Jesus has a unique relationship with the Father. Even here, like, look at this. You, Lord, in the beginning laid the foundations of the earth, and the heavens are the works of your hand. They will perish, but you continue. They will all grow old as garments, and as a mantle you will roll them up. They will be changed, but you are the same, and your years will not fail. If you go into this quotation is from Psalm 101 in the Septuagint, or 102 in the Hebrew. If you go and you read this entire these verses in context, the psalm is called a prayer to God, right? Or like an ode to God, something, but it's addressed to God. And it literally begins with, "Hear, O Yahweh, my prayer." Then that's the context in which this is written. It's in the original psalm, it's addressed to God. Then here, it's saying that God, that the Father says this to Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so it shows that like there's like is again a special relationship between the two.
Yeah, and you know the fact that Jesus is separate from the rest, you can also find that in John 1:1, right? In the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So in the beginning, right? Unlike the other ones who are part of the creation. So I guess that goes good for the divine council, right?
Yep.
You can always check out Michael Heiser's work. And I guess I could talk briefly about Reformed Epistemology a little bit, right?
Yeah. Go for it. I ain't got much to say about that, so it's the spotlight's on you.
Okay. So, do you really need an argument to know that something is true? So, an argument has premises and a conclusion, and these are all propositions. I guess it has at least one premise. But you can know stuff without really having this sort of thing. So I can know that I'm looking at my screen now just by assuming that my mind is properly functioning. So I'm not under some kind of illusion because I typically don't have hallucinations or whatever. And by observing it, right? And that makes me obtain a justified belief. Now, of course, some people would claim, yeah, but what about all of those skeptical scenarios, skeptical hypotheses, stuff like the brain in a vat, the Cartesian demon. They would say, well, you don't really know it, but at least I know that I observe something, right? And keep in mind that I know this not because I made some argument and I said, okay, there's premise 1, premise 2, premise 3, therefore, and then there's a conclusion, right? I just know it based on some process of the mind, right? So similarly, Alvin Plantinga made the case that, well, you can know God without arguments. That doesn't mean that there aren't any arguments. There are a bunch of them. And I would argue some of them, if you put them together and create a meta-argument for God, so a bunch of arguments together, that does raise the likelihood of the existence of God. So arguments could do something evidentially. But Plantinga claimed that there is something called the sensus divinitatis. He got that from Calvin. And it's something in the mind that helps people detect God. And this sort of sensus divinitatis that produces, in a sense, this properly basic belief for the existence of God. So it's foundationalism, not evidentialism, and he argues against evidentialism also in this book, Warranted Christian Belief. And it's a form of proper functionalism too, because he says that if your mind is properly functioning, well, then you will have this sensus divinitatis. It will detect God, and therefore you will have the belief that God exists, and it will be justified. He's talking about the propositional attitude, the belief that God exists. He's not really talking about faith or trust or whatever, or he's not talking, let's say, about knowing a person, right? This knowing individuals, the sort of stuff we talked on the first episode. But I would argue it could be extended to some extent, or you could argue that now, to know God as a person, that does require for there to be a relationship, so it does require for both parties to interact, so both you and God. That could be the case, but there could still be this sensus divinitatis that detects God and produces this sort of propositional attitude for his existence and makes it justified. So it's a probably basic belief, and then the rest, if they're based on it correctly, they could also be justified. That's what he claims. He calls it Reformed Epistemology. Some people have extended it, or changed it a little bit. Craig says that you can have a properly basic belief for the existence of God based on the interwitness of the Holy Spirit. And then he talks about, well, is it really the Holy Spirit who puts the belief in your mind, or is it you who obtains it through some kind of a process? There are a bunch of different ways to look at it, but that's another thing. So you could say, well, maybe it's not sensus divinitatis, maybe it's the witness of the Holy Spirit. Or you could say, I think, for example, you could extend it even to religious experiences, what they're called sometimes. So if you have a certain kind of a religious experience, not anything that random people think is a religious experience, and that could also produce this sort of belief with a warrant, right?
Yeah.
And with something that you added and it becomes knowledge. And to those who would say, yeah, but what about people who have religious experiences and they think of other religions, right? So this is the argument from the plurality of religions.
Yeah.
But then, well, I would say if truth is a condition of knowledge, then since their belief would be false because it's going to be about the true God, it wouldn't really be knowledge. Of course, then there might be another problem. How do they know that it's not knowledge, right? But it still would not be knowledge in itself, right? So that would be Reformed Epistemology in a nutshell. I think you can have both the sensus divinitatis and the witness of the Holy Spirit, and just like have something very broad. So there are a bunch of different processes through which you can obtain this properly basic belief. And I think, yeah, that this is something that could happen. Yeah. So you have something to say on this or not really?
Not really. Though I do have one thing to say on like the skeptical, like, hypothesis.
Okay.
That.
Okay.
I have an argument against it. Well, I know of an argument against it.
Is it
I have a hand, I have another hand. Therefore, this world exists.
Okay.
Everyone can like talk about how that works.
Okay. So let me talk first about Newcomb's paradox, just
Right.
because it's kind of over the top. And then we talk about that. So imagine, and this is a different topic, doesn't relate to the divine council, doesn't relate to the Reformed Epistemology. I just thought it would be a bit insane to talk about all of this stuff in one episode, and so I thought it would be kind of cool to include it. So imagine there are two boxes in front of you. One has $1,000, the other has either 0 or 1,000,000. And there's some sort of, some versions call it an entity, which is the predictor or whatever. Other versions say it's a supercomputer, but it's something, and it makes a prediction about whether, and your options are either you take only box B, and box B is not the one that has 1,000, it's the one that has either 1,000,000 or 0, or you take both. And the idea is, if it predicts that you take both in box B, it puts 0. If it predicts that you only take box B, then box B, it puts 1,000,000. And then the question is, what do you do? Do you take both, or do you take only box B? So what's your initial reaction to this? What do you think?
I would just box B.
Just box B?
Yeah.
And why is that?
Oh no, it's just, like I kind of zoned down like halfway to the middle because I'm kind of tired now again.
Oh, okay.
I'm just gonna choose like one box B because it's like
Okay.
Because I'm like lazy. Like you have to check box B then A. It's like why both? Just check one. Why do both? Then like if one is easier.
Okay, that's fine. So my answer would be that you gotta take both, because he made the decision, right? Okay, and then he put the money there based on his prediction. Keep in mind, this is not the same with God's foreknowledge, when he knows the future, what you will do, and then that happens. And whether you do it freely or you are in a sense determined to do it, that will depend on whether it's Molinism that's true or Calvinism or whatever. But it's not this kind of foreknowledge; it's just a prediction. So even if it predicts one way, it will be more likely, way more likely that that's the way. But it doesn't have to be. But my point would be that since he already put the money there, what you do after that doesn't really change what kind of money he put. So based on that, I would choose both. Because if you take B, either he put the 0 or 1,000,000. But if you take both, you take $1,000 plus from the box A, plus or either 0 or 1,000,000. So my point is, you kind of have to take both because you get this $1,000 plus.
So what I'm gonna say is not a serious comeback to it. So like again, I mean this jokingly, but if you check box B, you only have to check one box. You don't do extra work. It's like 50-50. It's either happens or it doesn't. You either get a bunch of money or you don't.
Okay. So that's not how probability works, but I know this is
again, it's not.
It's a reference. It's a reference to something. I don't think we should say it on this episode.
Yeah, it's a reference
to one specific person. Maybe he's watching this, but but anyway. So that will be my take on the Newcomb's paradox. I think we could do at some point an episode full of paradoxes, just for fun. I mean, it's not, maybe not too recent, maybe not in the near future, maybe after a while. But anyway, so that will be my take. So you want to talk about something else?
Oh, we can go back to the argument I made for against the brain of bats.
Let's go there.
Okay. So I jokingly say I have like a hand up in the other hand, therefore the physical world exists. the way that works is that like most like arguments for like being in a brain about like function something like if I'm in a brain of that, then I don't know like to have like a hand or something like that. Or if I don't know if I have a hand, that means I'm a brain of that. My bad. It's I don't know if I have a hand, therefore I'm a brain of that. It's Modens, ponens. I forgot who came up with this argument. I'll put his name in the description because like I'll just go and check my notebook again. He basically turns this Monens ponens into a Monens tollens. Like, I like basically saying, okay, I forgot my train of thought on this, but it's like he's like,
what is a modus ponens and what is a modus tollens?
Monens ponens is A then B, A therefore B. If the Monens tollens is A then B, not B, therefore not A.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, so he's basically flipping it. Right? Like,
in a sense, if you are a brain in a vat, that would imply that you don't have hands.
Yeah.
So if he says, well, but if I have hands, then it's false that I'm a brain in a vat.
Yeah,
so it kind of works like that. So if I have a hand, you don't even need to say I have another hand, right? Just by saying I have a hand, that implies that you are not a brain in a vat. But of course, they would say, yeah, but how do you even know that you have a hand? That's the whole point of
it's just right there. No, I'm joking.
Yeah, no, but he's appealing to common sense. He's saying, well, maybe that's more likely than the brain of that scenario.
I mean, you can also bring in Bayesian probability just to make it over the top.
Yeah, I guess it's possible to calculate that, right?
No, but like the logic thing I was trying to get at, it's like I got confused because it's like I think what he's doing is like if the physical world exists, then I know I have a hand, right? And saying I know I have a hand, it's the negation of I do not have a hand. So it's I not have a hand. So I do have a hand. So yeah.
Right, yeah, that is true. It's kind of a meme response, but no, it's
I mean it's like
it's famous, it's famous, No, I know, you got any other topics?
Not off the top of my head.
All right. So
what about Schrodinger's cats? Because we did like the paradox.
Okay, sure. What does that say?
I don't know. I just like it's like this thing in physics. Everyone can like dedicate an episode to like philosophy of science, and it's like, it's like there's like a box with a cat. It's both alive and dead until you open the box, then it collapses into one.
Yeah, and that's supposed to be an analogy for superposition in quantum physics, right? Yeah. Of course, it's not really possible for the cat to be both dead and alive. That's a contradiction. But that's not really what superposition is. It's meant to be. It's more that it gets properties from the other positions. So you have A, you have B, and it gets a little bit of A and a little bit of B. That's what superposition is supposed to be. And that's an analogy. In my mind, it's actually a bad analogy because it's phrased like it's a contradiction when in reality, superposition is not supposed to be a contradiction.
I was gonna say, I don't know. This came into mind where it's like, remember Michikaku? I forget like what book. Like it was one of his like popular books. I think it's called like. I think it might be called like the God equation. You know the one I'm talking about, right? Yeah.
There's a picture where he holds it like this. So
I can put like a picture up if you want. But so in it he talks about Berkeley for a minute. He said like how Berkeley has this radical view, if you know what subjective idealism is, what his view is. And then like he freaks out because it's like, oh yeah, but in quantum mechanics, this view gets like taken more, it becomes more insane where everything like if you go to a forest, it's not like if a tree falls in the middle of the forest and no one's there to perceive it, make a noise. He says it becomes even more extreme in quantum mechanics where it's like the tree doesn't fall. It's like if you're not perceiving a tree, it's both it falling down, it's perfect, it's like in its normal state, it's on fire, it's all of this stuff until you perceive the tree, then boom, it collapses into the actual state.
Yeah, but it depends on whether you take the many worlds interpretation of quantum physics or the other stuff.
Yeah.
But this is actually a philosophical sort of thing too, that if a tree falls down, does it make a noise or not? I would say it kind of depends what you mean by noise. Like, do you mean the experience of sound, or do you mean like physical stuff that makes
like the
sound?
vibrations?
Yeah, and that depends on whether physical stuff exists, right?
Yeah,
If you're an idealist, whatever, but yeah, it depends on stuff like that.
Yeah. I think that's about it, I guess.
I think that was a good episode because we talked about Divine Council for, I don't know, at least 40 minutes, right?
Yep.
And a bunch of stuff at the end. I'm not sure. Maybe some of them, they will get bored of that, whatever. Don't even bother.
Yeah.
And they won't even know about this. But for those of you who stayed, you got all this extra cool stuff. So that should remind you that you should watch all our episodes till the end. So that was the Fingers Oasis third episode. Hope you liked it. You are always free to like, share, and subscribe. You have something to say before we finish?
No.
All right.